nerds and film lovers and all the people in between. Welcome to New Movie Tuesdays. I'm your host, Matthew Salanoa, and on this show, I've watched a new movie and I'm here to tell you about it. So, I missed the opening weekend because I am a person who is not in a great financial place right now. And so I see my movies on Tuesdays, where, at least at my movie theater, it's $5 ticket in the morning. So that's a win for me. And much like the characters of this movie, Thunderbolts, we're all struggling a little bit on the inside. All right, so look, for those of you wondering, hey, weird pudgy guy with the double chin, how was this movie? Was it good? Yes, it was good. All right, I am a big fan of the MCU. I'm a big fan of Marvel. I grew up on the cartoons as a kid. I've read some of the comics. I'm not the biggest comic book reader, so I'm coming at it from that point of view. But look, as someone who appreciated what I guess we call now the legacy Marvel films, starting back with Blade, X-Men, Spider-Man, all the way back then. And I appreciated these movies that went to, like, Ghost Rider, some of the movies that were not the best. I love it all, but I'm such a fan of the MCU. I'm not one of the people who thinks that we've been in a lull. I think actually I loved Eternals and I love stuff like that. But I gotta say, Thunderbolts was excellent. I think, you know what, this is how you make a superhero movie. If you're not as good as, if you're not going to make Black Panther or Wakanda Forever, which are top tier as far as I'm concerned, then this is a good way to do it as well. I think this was Marvel's version of Suicide Squad. I really had a good time. The action was there. The humor was great. And the opening sequence takes place in Malaysia, where I have been, and I'll get to more of that later. But in terms of having a great villain, we had perfect villains on this one. Villains with a capital S, you know what I mean? I really thought this was a well-constructed movie. And, you know, what it does well, you know, reviewers always talk about plot, like they know what that means. This movie is not necessarily plot-heavy, but it's character-heavy. It's what superheroes excel at if you do it right, if you read the material, or if you know the material on some level, or if at the very least you're trying to tell a story. Remember, superheroes are rife with pathos. They're rife with things going on with them. And as I've heard from the billowing hype around the movie, that this movie is essentially a 2-hour therapy session, which it is a little bit. And I think, you know, we've all been facing dark times for many, many years. And for some of us who've been facing, you know, inner struggles, inner demons for a long time, I think this movie is going to speak to you. So for those of you looking for that fun time Marvel movie, it excels at that. For those of you just looking for a good movie, it definitely succeeds at that. And the truth is, a good Marvel movie is a good movie. It has to speak to you as a human being and have relatable characters. And this movie absolutely makes sure that we are going into literally going to each of the characters' inner life. I enjoyed Captain America 4, but I do think this is a far superior movie, because what Captain America 4 did not have was an inner life to the main character. He had people he knew, he had people he cared about, but he just didn't have his own personal inner life, which I thought was sorely missing from that movie, because you can't really side with a guy and be on his side, even though I think the writing around his, like, beliefs and what he stood for, that was fine, but everything else, it just didn't add up to the rest of the movie, even though the Hulk sequence at the end was superb. But I would say, in counterpoint, Thunderbolts does the exact right amount of giving us the character, giving us action, giving us character, giving us action. It's the old school storytelling format for Hollywood movies, which is, you have to remember that the audience does want character. We do want a good story, but we also want a good action, good fun, some humor. And this movie is like a very well balanced movie. This movie is a very well balanced experience that provides all of those elements. I thought It was really great. It's really not what entirely what you expect. I didn't expect us to spend so much time building the characters, but the way they do it, they never lose momentum. And this movie is all about momentum. I really feel like the acts blur between each other, but that I think is the strength of the movie, because it's very smooth in how it takes us from one character's journey to another, and its usage of time is very, very well done. And I have to say, hats off Florence Pugh, David Harbour, uh, Sebastian Stan. I lose the mind. The actress who plays Ghost, who I was so excited to see her back, because she has such an exciting character from Ant-Man 2, and then she wasn't present, and I'm like, hey, come on, why do you introduce this character if she's not coming back? And then they brought her back in an excellent way. And then the actor who plays Bob, the actor who plays Sentry, he was wonderful, and I thought they really did a great job of making this a very natural assembly of a team, where the plot and the story elements came together in what felt in an organic way, much in the way I felt we had in the first Avengers, where the strength of that movie was that the way each Avenger joined the team felt natural to the story. It felt like it was happening because that's what was right for the situation. Because as a storyteller, that's what you got to do. You got to build your scenario so that when the audience watches it, they don't just go, oh, so this was just easy, huh? You just call people and they show up, huh? But, how is that going to work with a bunch of people who are personalities that are not going to want to work together naturally? And the first Avengers did that. And Thunderbolts did a wonderful job. I would say this is quite literally the Dark Avengers, right? This Thunderbolts team is made up of criminals, people guilty of serious crimes, and except that they've all tried to turn a new leaf, except that their way of turning a new leaf and not going to jail was doing the same exact thing that made them criminals in the first place, but switching governments. So the movie does a great job of having them all confront, like, hey, how exactly is this supposed to be a superhero team when we know all of them are guilty of something? And when Bucky shows up in the movie, and he really his character hits the nail on the head about, we've already seen Bucky's journey from being a villain to being an anti-hero, and then ultimately finally becoming a hero in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But in this movie, now he has to take a new mantle, not necessarily as a leader. I'm not going to spoil anything by saying it, but this is not exactly a group that has a core leader, but we see them all kind of try. But I think the best thing is that Florence Pugh's character is the heart of the team, and she's our main character. And I think that's another thing. A lot of movies fail because they try to have an ensemble cast and try to make you can't make everybody the main character. Someone has to be the main character through which we see everything. So by making Florence Pugh the main character, it's just, when you see the story through her point of view, how we get to the ending, and how are you going to face the ultimate villain, which appears at the end of this movie. It's wonderful. I think I was really pleased with how they got to the end and how they made this work. They made Marvel's version of Suicide Squad works, and it's done the way that I'm sure was maybe the original plan for Suicide Squad, but they didn't, studio meddling. And Marvel's not guilt-free of studio meddling either. Every studio does it. That's what makes them the studio. But I would say the way the action and story fold in this movie, this is how superhero movies are supposed to be done. I mean, they can be done many different ways, but if you're going to do a group movie, if you're going to have basically a cast of really big personality characters, this is a great way to do it. Really smoothly working in, and literally the powers themselves, Bob, amongst his abilities is the ability to touch someone and go into their past. And so using that that's the way we can cleverly get some backstory on everybody, especially for those of you. What's great about this is if you haven't seen any Marvel before this, you know, if you're interested in the MCU, you want to watch Marvels, but you know, hey, I haven't watched these movies. I don't know who any of these characters are. What's excellent is this movie not only gives you enough, you know, back exposition without overwhelming you, but the whole usage of that power is it's just such a great way to shorthand. Oh, hey, here's who this guy is. You know, you don't even need to see the other movies because it's telling you something that's not in the other movies. And I think that's the strength of this movie. It stands on its own while reflecting the past, but also giving us something, another layer to each character, that if you've never seen a Marvel movie before, you can watch this movie and just dial in and just see what's going on, who are these people, what's their baggage, and it does it quickly, like a real Marvel comic. I think the best Marvel movies are like the comics, where you know you have a character with an issue, but you know you may not know what happened in the previous issue, but they'll give you in a clever way. Sometimes it's a clever way, sometimes it's just with some quick dialogue, but they'll give you a little bit of backfill just so you can go, oh, I know what's going on. Okay, cool. Well, I'm into the story now. And that's what this movie does. This totally plays like a Marvel comic reads. But also it does have it has some deep themes that are about depression and about tackling life during hard times. And every character reflects that. So I think, A, if you're looking for a fun Marvel movie, but B, if you are also wanting a good movie that you can possibly relate to, I think this movie is going to do that for you. So I don't really want to spoil it too much, but let's see. What's a worth the price of admission moment? Worth the price of admission. Dang, the beginning of this movie is worth the price of admission. Just how the movie starts. We start with the Malaysian sequence that has been promoted probably the most, because it's really not attached to the rest of the movie except that it is. But Malaysia, where I've been, beautiful country, wonderful food. That's where Yelena starts. She's on a mission. It's very cool action. For those of you looking forward to Mission Impossible, I think that's the great thing with the Black Widow character, which is what Yelena is. She's the sister of Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. They both came from the same program, so basically we're getting the same type of character, but it's just a different personality behind it. So getting in, if you're excited for Mission Impossible, you want some of that Mission Impossible style action, we get that right up front, and it's totally worth the price of admission. Very funny, you know what I mean, a good sense of humor, and it just sets us off into everything that's going to follow. But then I think really also another worth the price of admission moment is the reveal of Bob, and just exactly how powerful Bob is. So to me, every single scene, it makes the movie more worth watching as we go. But I do want to do a little shout out to Yo-Yo Geraldine as her Instagram handle. This actress whose name I'm slipping on right now, she plays the secretary or the assistant to our villain, Miss Valentina I forgot her name. I just know her first name is Valentina. She's Veep. It's Veep. Veep is a bad guy. So Veep is a bad guy in this one, and Yo-Yo Geraldine is her assistant. But I just want to shout her out because although I forgot her name, which should be right here, she is in Drive Away Dolls, which is a very fun movie, and you know her role is good. I think what's cool about this movie is that even the small role like that it's a good role. It plays a part in the story. Nobody's wasted. Every bit of screen time matters. And that's how a Marvel movie should be made. I mean, first of all, characters have to have something on the inside for the audience to connect with in the first place. And then on top of that, the action blends with the story very well. So if you're looking for a good Marvel movie that's also just a good movie in the first place, Thunderbolts, I think, is going to be for you. And it might make you cry a little bit, which a movie should do. I think, it's been a long time since I've seen a Shrek. I love Shrek, And I think this is a movie about, five Shreks teaming up, you know, and that's what stories are about. Stories are about connecting, your whatever your human pain is, and expressing that to the world. And if you're lucky, the world will appreciate it. And I think that's the power of Shrek. And again, this Thunderbolts movie should just be called The Five Shreks. We got five Shreks, and it's going to be a good time, So that's my as spoiler free as I can get, but also final worth the price of admission moment when Sentry becomes Sentry. It's great. It's so cool, and it's just a brief amount of the most exciting action in the movie that there is, but it's such a wonderful taste of what this person is capable of that I just can't help but be excited about what he's going to be on an Avengers level movie when they actually got real money. Because this movie, it's, even though we have three super soldiers, two of them Russian and one technically para-soldier, not really a soldier, but one government science experiment gone wrong, but four superhumans who are legit superhumans. Even though we have that, it's all basically just Black Ops. It's superhuman Black Ops. It is what's in the darkness, which is thematically important. They're characters who are off the grid bad guys, or former bad guys trying to be good guys, or trying to get some level of redemption. And it's a good time, man. It's a good time. So that's what I got to say, spoiler free. And if you stick around for the popcorn to stop, I'll get into some spoilers, and I'll talk about what I really like to talk about on this channel is movies from a filmmaker's point of view. And I'm going to talk about some themes. I'm going to talk about scenes and symbolism. So if any of that interests you, stick around for the popcorn to end, and I'm going to get into some of that. And I'll talk about some of my favorite scenes as well. Oh, but before I go to spoilers, let me say, is it worth sitting through the end credits? Because I know I sat through the Captain America end credits, and I felt like I didn't need to after that. The end credits for this movie, worth waiting for. Worth it waiting for. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. Worth waiting for. Wait for it. So thanks for watching spoiler free. Go see the movie, and maybe come back, and if you're a filmmaker, or you like talking about how movies are made, or just from the point of view of symbolism and stuff, then stick around for the popcorn to end. All right, catch you later. Welcome to the spoiler side, where I get a little nerdy, bro. I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy. First of all, favorite scenes. Oh my god, the opening is fun. I've been to Malaysia. I went there in 2017. The country's so beautiful. The food is so good. I gotta tell you. Now, Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. So what you may not know about Muslim culture is that, much like Jewish culture, they do have a bit of a shared origin. The way they prepare their meat, it's sacred. They're not allowed to do what we do in America to our food. In America, we have food product. It's not really food. In Malaysia, they're not allowed to do that. So everything is halal. So when you get some of their, and I think what I could say is, how sometimes you might try Vietnamese food, or you might try like legitimate Chinese food, and the flavors are so wild and stuff. It's kind of out there. You're like, whoa, what did I just eat? Malaysian food is like that. It's like, it's the beauty. You got delicious spices, but you also eat it knowing that what you're eating, the meat is good. And literally, the meat is good. It tastes delicious because they're not allowed to do what we do to our food. So, I think, and it's also, not to get too political here, it is the most popular religion in the world. So for those of you who may suffer from Islamophobia, just try Malaysia out, okay? It's a peaceful country for the most part, but don't be doing no drugs over there, okay? It's not, Asia as a whole is very hard on drugs, so don't be trying to be like that. Just go, be your best self, get around, check out the sites, and try that food, because you will taste how good it is. It's like, it's like, I like to think of it as like a merging of Indian food and Mexican food. Like, it has that right level of spice, flavor, and just tasting great. Yeah, so yeah, definitely, if you're interested in world traveling, it's a place to see. Kuala Lumpur is where I went. That's basically their most famous city and where most people visit. Yeah, you got to try, because try the oblong burger. If you there's a place with an oblong burger, I like the black pepper one. So good. So good. Anyway, so for me, the beginning is a special highlight because I've actually been there. But man, I love David Harbour as Red Guardian. He's just back. Whatever you, I liked the first Black Widow movie. I think it wasn't a perfect movie, but it was also, to me, it was clearly a James Bond love letter. It was clearly a James Bond love letter. If you've seen James Bond movies and you like James Bond as a true fan, there's so many references to that movie, to that entire franchise. But yeah, David Harbour being back was great, and I love how they all get trapped. How all of our heroes get trapped in a vault to be killed, which is such a comic book movie thing. It's so comic booky, and yet also how their relationships form is out of that. And Bob just showing up, just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. That was awesome. But man, it was so cool that the way they escape, and there's the explosion, and then essentially Yelena and Bob getting thrown together and holding hands, that pathway into her darkness. What I want to say, look, if you've seen the movie, I'm just going to be talking about this as if you've seen it. So sorry if I'm spoiling it for you. You should have waited, but whatever. What's cool is that, we start in the darkness, and she realizes she's in a forest, and this is where her earliest regret is, which is tricking another student out into the woods only to be assassinated. And note that every time we go into a flashback for any of the villains, it's always in the dark. The character's in the dark. And what I really like is that when we see John Walker's flashback, and he's not really watching his kid, and he's on his phone, which is kind of a criticism of where the world is going now. We're so much more controlled by this. Oh wait, I thought you were filming on your phone. Yeah, I have another phone. That's how bad it is. But really, like, it's also just showing, like, this is where he is. It's not just that he's in the phone, but his head is just not at home. He's got this dream that he destroyed with his own hands, and now he's living in regret. But also, when you look at the lighting, he himself is in shadow. Each character is in shadow, with the exception of Yelena. But this is what all these flashbacks show. Even I love the one of Valentina, when we see her as a kid, and she's literally in the darkness. It doesn't mean that the actual flashback was in darkness. It's the lighting. We're talking about cinematography here, and the choice of the director. The lighting, this is storytelling through lighting, that this is each character, this is their darkness. This is what they're absorbed with. And granted, this is, no S Sherlock, right? Yeah, that's obvious, right? But it's what's called symbolism. So if you're a filmmaker, if you want to be a filmmaker, I have action movies, storytelling through action, where this is all I talk about is that things are shot with intention, and action scenes create relationships. So even though our first action scene is technically Yelena doing the Mission Impossible thing, but what we get out of that is, like, she's doing all this fighting, she's having a sense of humor, but she's just killing people, and she's not happy. She's despite everything she's doing, it brings her no joy. She gets nothing out of it because she's alone, and she feels alone. And even the lighting suggests she's just this person in the dark moving around other people who are in the dark. And that's what I think is beautiful about one of her first action shots. It's just this overhead shot where you're seeing people's shadows, and it's the long draping shadows, right? So also even the lighting is hinting at what Bob is going to be about. But I think it's so beautiful that when we get John Walker's flashback and when we snap out of it, it's after they got themselves out of the elevator, but then when he snaps awake, he's looking down at the darkness of this dark shaft of the elevator. So he's literally looking into his own void. And Bob calls him an asshole, right? And actually he is. He's a bit of an asshole in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but you see that whatever has happened to him since then, he has really devolved. He's really fallen apart, and he's just not, even in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he had a little bit more pep and a little bit more spirit, and his spirit has been utterly broken. So, and even his suit, which is already black, it's even tarnished and darker than that. And he actually, in some ways, looks the most like the Void, which is Sentry's alternate side. So when John Walker is looking down at the void, the darkness of the tunnel, or the darkness of the elevator shaft, as he's looking, his flashback is literally him looking into his own abyss. So I am working on a show, if I ever make it. It's entirely about all of these things, which I think is so touching about this movie, because it made all of it accessible. I think what's very cool about the storytelling of Sentry is it reminds me, although I've never read any comics featuring Sentry, it reminds me exactly of this comic book called The Spectre. And the Spectre, he is a superhero with many powers, but amongst those powers, he can go into the memories and the mind of whoever he touches as well. And essentially, I think it was Alan Moore's writing, I can't remember, but essentially the beauty of storytelling, it doesn't, you don't defeat an OP person, an overpowered person with more power. That doesn't work that way. But the beauty of storytelling is that you defeat them by understanding their character and finding what would actually work on them as a character. You look at Dr. Manhattan, and he has this whole long story of being from the 50s to the 80s, watching his lover and his family and his friends age. And what makes him leave planet Earth is that people believe Dr. Manhattan as well as this practically radioactive being. He's made to believe that he's caused cancer and killed off a number of people that he knew across his life, and that's what destroys his spirit and makes him leave. And so the same thing with the Sentry. He's kind of a bit of Dr. Manhattan, and he's a little bit of the Spectre. And so you're not going to defeat this guy with force and with power, which is great because, again, we're working with 3 super soldiers who only have a certain amount of super strength, which is what I love when the Void comes out. But again, when we get the introduction of Sentry and the suit is beautiful, and and you see the handling of his character, like this is so comic booky, where the villain is always this conniving manipulator who is essentially either going back and forth between gaslighting and just being gently suggestive. You know what I mean? They're constantly towing that line because they see where the character is at emotionally. And that, I mean, I've seen, literally that's what the Jackal does to Punisher in Punisher's comic book with Spider-Man, his introduction. So, a character who is so powerful, it's still a person. I think we have this problem in society where we like to take people for granted and they're just something. Oh, that's just a janitor. It doesn't matter what you do. Or that's just this person who does a job. It doesn't matter. They're not even a person anymore. They're just the title that you've assigned to them, and then they're just trash. But this is essentially the baggage that each of these people carry, that, they're not, all the people they kill are just targets. It's just my target, so it doesn't matter. But that's also what these flashbacks reveals. That's also how these people feel about themselves. And ultimately, Sentry himself, that is how Sentry feels about himself. And that quite literally the Void is just him in absolute shadow. And it's his darkest thoughts telling him everything that pains him is that you always make things worse. But what is you always make things worse? I love that we use the flashbacks as a way to travel through this shadow dimension of pain and suffering. And it's through that we find regular Bob. And regular Bob is just he's in the attic where he's safe. It's his hiding place for when his dad would be abusive at home. And this is really hits home for me. But then also when we're seeing him, we're seeing a moment when he tried to stick up for his mother, and the mother, instead of appreciating it, blamed him, which does happen a lot. Now, I would say, if I must reveal something about myself that connects to this movie, I am Sentry, except for that. I am absolutely Sentry. I exactly know what he's going through in his head. And I too, I only smoke marijuana, but I too have definitely abused marijuana in trying to choke down bad memories that I just wish were not in my head, and try and somehow think that that's going to work. And I like that that's what Yelena says she does at the beginning of the movie. I just stuff it all down. I stuff it all down the void, all the way down the elevator shaft, right? So symbolism of things going down, things being suppressed. You're using the drugs. It's just a form of suppression. But the only way out is togetherness. Everyone sticking together. And, sometimes some people feel like they don't have an everyone to go to, but then you must find your everyone. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the Thunderbolts, is that each one of them, some of them do have an everyone to go to. In the case of Yelena and Red Guardian, you see Red Guardian's not taking care of himself. He even has a job, and he's still not happy. He's not taking care of himself. And it takes to the end of the movie for him to see Yelena is actually really in the same spot as him, except that she just has this negative perspective of herself, and he reminds her, like, no. And it made me think of even her in the flashback in opening of Black Widow, like, you were the kid who would light up the room. And I thought, that was kind of what she was like in that movie too. It was like she was the only innocent person. She was the only innocent person at the beginning of Black Widow. And that's what leads into the most haunting title sequence I've seen in some time. But I just think it's powerful. It's really powerful stuff that this type of storytelling matters. I think I always talk about Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is a relatable character, not because he makes jokes, not because he wears a mask and anybody can be under it. He's a relatable character because he's a person who made a serious mistake, and his mistake ended up leading to his uncle's death. And that darkness is why he wears the mask, because he needs to fight and stop that from happening ever again. But I actually was moved to tears with the scene where Bob faces the void and he starts punching him, and actually it doesn't work. And it just made me think of myself and how much I both use marijuana, and even how I am in my own head, how I try to punish myself and I try to fight that negative self-image so hard, and yet it just keeps telling me, it never stops speaking because it's just so powerful. And I thought, it's so beautiful that Yelena, having been reminded of who she really is in her heart, in the heart of her heart, that before you were forced to do things that you didn't want to do and became this person, your original self, the real you beneath all of that, beneath the choices you had no choice in the matter when you were a kid, but the things that you then did as an adult, beneath all those choices, if there was this innocent person who just wanted to be there for other people, and that's the real core of who you are. And then that core comes out in the finale, and that's when she grabs him and holds on to Bob, because she's really his first friend. They're the first friends in the movie, and that's what was so touching. I felt there's a little chemistry, a little romantic chemistry, but really they're the first friends in the movie. And you got to figure why, because on the inside their darknesses match each other or reflect each other. They complement each other. And both of them have had something in their childhood that they could not control, but they blame themselves for, partially because they were blamed for it. But you're a kid. Really, things like that are out of your control. So I just think this is just very powerful as a movie, and this is what a movie's supposed to do. A movie is supposed to reach to your heart. Again, all the comic book fun is fun, but when you see all the Thunderbolts split up after the first fight with Sentry, which was so cool and impressive, you see it, that intimidates them so much, and it just breaks their spirits again, and they all split apart. But what brings them together is that they see people in trouble once the void comes out. And I love the moment of them all holding up that concrete wall from crushing the woman. And that's the moment of them intentionally standing together and helping each other out. And then again, when Bob can't defeat the void, and you see he's about to become another void and perhaps be unable to be saved, that's when the Thunderbolts help out Yelena, and they all hold him, and they all hold him back, and they all hold him together, and they make him feel loved. They make him feel like he's not alone. And I think so much of us stay in our own void because we just feel so alone, and it's terrible. But I think to that degree, if you are out there feeling that way, let you know, everyone who feels alone, you're not alone. You know what I mean? Somebody out there is willing to help you. You just got to reach out, and you might not get someone right away, but somewhere out there, someone cares about you. But you also, you have to accept that it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but reach out. You know what I mean? And I think that's just the powerful part of this movie. The beautiful thing is the plot is what forces these people together. But the story is that they all realize they need each other. And so, with that being said, I thought this was a very well put together movie. I really like the symbolism and how it all adds up. Literally the darkness surrounding the city. But you see that each one of us, if I am Sentry, each one of us is Sentry. Walker, the dishonorably discharged Captain America, Walker, he's a Sentry. We all go out into the world with our darkness, and it's just, we have to remember that the light is still there, and just, reach out, and maybe, hopefully, someone will be there for you too. It's a long, winding world we're stuck in, spinning around in the darkness, but each one of us has the light too. So anyway, I really thought the movie was powerful on that regard, and it's ironic that a conversation I was having this morning was exactly what this movie was about. And I even reached over to my friend and patted her on the shoulder. It was like exactly at the line of Red Guardian, saying, you used to be someone who lit up the room, and you always wanted to be there for people. And I know that's who you are, even though all you can see about yourself is your mistakes. And I was like, Jesus, this is the exact conversation. I'm even wearing red. It's the exact conversation I had with my friend this morning before we saw the movie. So, yeah. So if you're out there, and I know you're in the void, just reach out, okay? Just someone out there wants to help you. I'm sure they do. And they want to help you the right way, Manipulators want to keep you in that darkness, but someone out there wants to help you out. So anyway, excellent movie, very well crafted. I will be looking for the filmmaker. I already forgot his name, but I'll be looking for that name for the future. And I think we should all be very excited for whatever he makes next. And the end credits, dude, the end credits, man. Oh my God. When that ship shows up with that logo on it, oh no, this also spells great terror for the Fantastic Four movie, doesn't it? Anyway, that being said, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time on New Movie Tuesdays. And if you're a young filmmaker, you like action movies, you want to make action movies, and you enjoyed this little spoiler section, I have a new podcast out, Action Movies, Storytelling Through Action. please check it out. I also have a playlist called How the Bread is Made. It's a collection from my old podcast, which I think was a real hit or miss podcast, but I made a special playlist called How the Bread is Made, specifically where I think I pulled out the best episodes where I honed in on how movies are made, what you should be thinking about as a filmmaker, what you should be paying attention to as a filmmaker. So if you're a newbie filmmaker, you saw Thunderbolts, like, I want to make stuff like that, or I want to make superhero movies, I want to be in the industry. Well, I think you should consider checking out this playlist, and also check out action movies, storytelling through action. I'm a bit more intense, I'm a bit more passionate, but to me, that's what it takes to be on that level. And as another podcast will explore in a future episode, I'll eventually tell you why I'm not in the industry, but I almost was. So that's what I got to say. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Right on. Aloha, mahalo, and aloha. Eee! You're good enough. It's not your fault. You were just a kid. Love you.